Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Saturday morning show, Lettings Winter Prep Gym. This is really an important one, and it's a good checklist for our landlords and tenants and things for a warm and safe rentals through this winter period. We do this every year, and it's really important, I feel, because I think everybody's aware the weather's turning and the winter's obviously really setting in, and it brings with it that obviously chilling collection of potential problems with your rental property. And there is a lot of tips and things you could do to prevent. Prevention is the key, I think, here.
Yeah, it is absolutely. Prevention is better than cure. And when it comes to winter, we'll often forget it. It's usually around about September, August, when everybody starts phoning because it's like you're putting your central heating on for the first time.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like there's something wrong with central heating, and it's like I'm no surprised. It's been switched off for the last 5 months, and if it's been switched off for the last 5 months, the zone valves and that will probably have stuck, or the radiator valves will have stuck as well. So these are all the prep things, and make sure all your settings are right. Make sure your system pressure's up. Make sure things like you're giving your house proper ventilation, because this is the time of year, we're going to talk about this in a wee bit more detail, but this is the time of year that everybody doesn't put their stuff out in the washing line. They put it on the radiators, and then they end up having damp in their house, and they go, it's no damp,
it's actually condensation.
It's condensation.
Yeah.
And so these are all the things, and roofers. Preventative maintenance during the summer and the spring. That's the key here for roofers, because if you get something wrong at the last minute, when it's pouring in rain or when the snow's on your roof, you're goosed. The roofer can't go up. You can't, could you go up and fix that? It's like, okay, it's pouring in rain. What part of the roof do you want me to stand on to avoid slipping off? Nowhere. That person can't go up there just now for that very reason. So all the prevention really has to be. I mean, we were doing this now, and everybody's going, I wish you had told me this 3 months ago. But we're doing this now. So keep this for next year then, for anybody who's doing it, and actually act on it now. These are all the things you've got to do preventive maintenance. Because remember, you've got a duty of care to the tenant, but also you've got to make sure your property is wind and watertight and fit for habitation. That's the key here.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's this misunderstanding, especially what you say about roofers, Jim, as well. I mean, the bad with that is people phone us and have obviously issues with water ingress and water coming in and things like that. That's fine, we'll get the roofer to look at it, but not until it's cleared up, and there's nothing we can do about it in the meantime except from obviously try and manage the problem the best you can. But in many ways,
if you're a tenant, just say, if you're a tenant and you're tuning in right here, put a bucket under where it's the water's coming in and catch the water. Don't just let it go straight onto the ground. You'll be amazed at how many people that I've had in houses over the years that have just let it happen without actually making any preventative effort at all. Oh, but it's the landlord that should be doing it. Well, I'll be honest, you're not exactly the model tenant then if that's the case, and no one will want you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in many ways, rental homes are a bit more at risk when they're occupied in winter, because of the daily lives and the concerns of tenants can sometimes be at odds to the interests of a landlord or a person who actually owns their home. So this week we're going to run through, and you touched on a few of them, the things, the balance to getting things right, and measures to take. And firstly, it's keeping condensation and mold and damp at bay, maintaining smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors, combining cost savings on bills and conscious property care as well, and reducing the risk of water damage and ice. We've seen that a lot with if there's damage to Harlan and things, and people just don't understand if water gets in behind there and then freezes. It's a big repair job.
Makes it worse, and cracks on the outside as well. Yeah. Especially the water goes in and it keeps constantly. And if you've got an outside, your vent pipe for your water, your vent pipe for your water,
overflow.
So the overflow pipe, that's it for your water or your cistern or anything like that. Make sure that's sorted, because if you keep that constantly dripping, what happens is it eventually freezes up inside, and then your toilet and your WC or your water tank overflows as a result of it, because it's got nowhere for the water to go now.
Yeah, that could be a recipe for disaster. But and also planning ahead when potentially a tenant goes on holiday. Tenants got a duty of care to notify landlords and agents if they're going to be leaving the property vacant or go on holiday for a certain period of time. insurance purposes, and like I say, preventative measures as well. So to ensure our landlords and things don't get caught out by the cold, we check these things at all our homes, and we manage as part of our scheduled like inspections and things as well. This is all things like roofs and the things that you look as preventative measures to make sure ahead of time as best you can. But the tenant's got a duty to help us do that as well.
Absolutely. However, I actually questioned this at one point in time with a legal advisor about, what does the tenant have any legal duties at all? Because we had a wee spat with a tenant. Well, I wouldn't say a spat, a debate. And he says, "Oh, but I've not got, it's no my responsibility." And I went, "Wait a minute, I'm sure it is." So I checked with a legal advisor, just because it's like, I know the law and I know most of the law and the legislation, but I thought I'm just going to check again to make sure, because it was a long time ago I checked this. And yes, the tenant has normal tenant duties, which are usually prescribed and written down in the actual tenancy agreement, which is a contractual agreement between you and the tenant or the letting agent, or vice versa. And you have a duty as a tenant to make sure you notify the letting agent or your landlord as soon as practical of any situation that could incur damage to the property, or anything that's wrong with the property. It could affect your safety, or make sure it's wind and watertight as well. So a tenant's got as much of a duty as the landlord. Sitting there and letting damp happen and posting on social media saying, "Oh, this landlord's terrible," and the landlord's going, "I know nothing about this."
Yeah.
It's like, this person's being told me they've decided to go straight to social media and get likes and get attention for the predicament, when they actually should be going straight to the letting agent or landlord.
Yeah. And I think also, if you don't have a letting agent or somebody managing the property for you, and you are self-managed, what we're going to talk about today can be really helpful and useful to you. So obviously, or share it with others as well, and together you can work with your tenant so everyone stays safe and warm and things through this obviously winter period. First thing we're going to talk about is clearing the air, and this is one of the most important ones, and I'm glad it's first, because as you said, Jim, it's something that comes up a lot at this time of year, people drying clothes and things.
Every single time.
Yeah, with the heating cranked up and the cold weather outside, conditions are perfect for condensation to form. So it's wise to take precaution to drop your tenants some tips. Even have a help sheet and help them avoid damp and mildew in their property. We have. So
I'm just out. I had to get it in somewhere. I'm just out of Spain just now.
Although it looks great.
I tell you what, I'm just out of Spain just now, okay? And it's 20 degrees, that's fine. But I just had a shower, and the whole place, the whole bathroom is steam. Now I've got wall-to-wall tiles. I have a mirror as well and all the rest of it. So I had to wipe all that down and everything. But I opened the door and then opened the bedroom windows to make sure the whole area gets aerated. Because you know what happens. This is what happens. Mold and mildew start to build up overall. And then what happens is, again, we're coming back to normal tenant duties, about the fact that I'm going to give tenants a hard time here, to be honest, because I've had a few in the past, and it's like, "Oh, well, we didn't think we were responsible for that." Of course you are. If you see a bit of mold and mildew on your tiles, or around your bath, or in your skirting or anything like that, or anywhere on the ceiling, if you can get up to it, then you've either got to report it, or you need to wipe it down with a bit of a damp cloth and Dettol or Mestos or bleach or something like that.
You get good sprays now that are
something to stop it happening, and not just sit there and let it continue and continue and continue. And then 6 months later, when the landlord appears for an inspection, or the letting agent appears for the inspection, they go, "Well, so when did you know about this?" It's like, "Well, about 6 months ago." It's like, "So why did you know? Why did you not report something?" It's like, so it's got progressively worse over the months, and therefore, what was an easy wipe it down has now become £1,000 job.
Yeah,
that's chargeable to the tenant, by the way, if that's negligence.
Yeah, talking about sprays and things as well, Jim, and one I recommend to people, and I use it myself as well if I need to. There was one in B&Q, and it's called HD. It's a whole range. And they were a wee bit expensive. They're about £6 a bottle, but they're now stocked in Home Bargains for around about £2.99. And it's
Home Bargains is probably the place to go. Keep the guy in his lifestyle he has in the British Virgin Islands, across from Necker Island.
Oh yeah, you showed us that.
Mosquito Island, actually, they're on the family.
But I mean, it is quite affordable now, and it's brilliant stuff. So, But again, obviously, anybody wanted any tips on how to do that, then you should have, if you've got an agent or something, they should have a help sheet for you. And on that, it should remind you not to dry wet clothes on radiators and things, as the humidity can lead to mold on the walls. Now, it's not to say you're not to use the radiators, but ventilate while you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, a classic is you get them out of, I think it's Better Wear. You know, you get the radiator hangers that you hang it on the radiator, and you can just put your clothes there. But make sure you open a window somewhere to actually ventilate it. So we're not saying don't dry your stuff on the radiators, because sometimes you're just going to have it because you need it for next day or something like that. But don't do all the time, because you're really going to cause a problem for you overall in terms of your health. It's your health as well. It's you, it's causing it. It's not anybody else other than you is causing it in that situation. So make sure you ventilate the whole house properly. Oh, but it's cold outside. It's just what you're going to have to do, because if you put your clothes outside, it would be cold anyway and they wouldn't dry. So make sure you get a proper radiator dryer to hang it on, rather than actually just putting on the radiator. So it just goes. So what happens with the radiator, if you don't have the proper radiator dryer, here's what happens. You put it right on top of it. Therefore, the hot air's got nowhere to circulate except dry this one piece of clothing. Therefore, the only thing that comes out of that radiator is condensation. There's no hot air to dissipate it or dry it out. It's just condensation. That's why you put it on a proper hanger, so this hot air circulates around the room at the same time as easily drying your clothes overall. That's what you need to do.
Yeah, and and then that brings us on to trickle vents. And I like to speak for experience, because I think people maybe think we sit and talk about this and don't actually know. We have the same issues as well. If your windows have trickle vents, you need to be keeping them open all year round. But I did notice in my house the other day it was really cold, and I actually felt the breeze coming in the trickle vent, so I closed them. But then the next day I opened them again. You know, but so they need to stay open to ventilate, because they're so important to keep that air flowing and all year round. And like I say, if it's a really cold day, you can close them, obviously.
Now, if you don't have trickle vents, most windows now have a secondary locking latch. So in other words, you can just open your window. There's usually two channels on the actual view. If you open the window and look down where it closes into, where it locks into, you have two channels for locks. One is obviously to lock the window perfectly tight, and the other one is you can just close the window and it locks into the secondary one, and it leaves a wee gap like the trickle vent, so it constantly allows air into the property and obviously condensation to go out. If you have a humidifier and you really want to do it quick, we have the laundry, we've got the pulley. Okay, well, it's no laundry. It's basically, you know, the size of an L-shaped kitchen. That's ultimately it. So we've got that. But we've got a clothes hanger up there. But what we do is we do put the heating on, but we put a humidifier in there, because the humidifier will dry it a lot quicker as a result. And I even do that out here in Spain, because, you know, even though it's 20 degrees outside, the moisture is still in the air, so it doesn't dry as quick here. So I do put a humidifier in as well, and just put all the stuff into the bathroom. So that's another one. You know, if you want to dry stuff out, you get a proper clothes horse, stick it in the bathroom, put a humidifier in. Obviously, you've not got plugs in the bathroom. You might just want to stick it through the door and obviously attach it to a plug outside, and just stick that through the door and let the place dry out, and let it take all the moisture let it take the moisture out of the clothes. In other words, drag it out of the clothes, and then what happens is it'll put it into a water tank, and then you can just pour it down the drain, or you can pour it down the toilet, recycle it. You know, just use it for the toilet as well.
The secondary locking on the windows as well. Even like your big windows in your living room have the hopper windows at the top, have a secondary locking and things as well. And also, I mean, I think no matter what time of year, you should encourage people, and you should have this in your own mindset anyway, to open your windows maybe once, twice a week, even if it's just a half an hour, to let the fresh air through and circulate. And like you say, Jim, it's for your own health as well. You know, and what you're going to say?
I've got to admit, it's like Elaine opens all the windows and I go right at the back and close them all. It's like it's bloody Baltic in here. So I'm sometimes the culprit. Hence the reason why we use a humidifier, because I'd rather have the humidifier on, taking all the moisture out of the air, rather than actually having to open the window.
But then I was just going to say, obviously, it's, when it gets to this time of year in Scotland, there isn't a lot of chance to get out and about and get fresh air. So it's good to open the windows and things, but
If you've got an issue and you think to yourself, I can't afford the humidifier, you should probably watch the wealth creation show at 12:30 on a Monday. Because if you can't afford a humidifier, then you need to learn about how to make money and develop wealth, and that's what the wealth creation show is all about. Anyway, that's a plug for 12:30 on Monday.
I was just going to say we're doing that on Monday, and I'll let you know what we're talking about at the end. But yeah, reducing humidity. There's other things you could do as well, and we do this in all your properties, Jim, is use an extractor fan above the hob. I mean, that's a really important one. You're cooking and things, just to get that. Opening windows slightly during and after your shower, and that's just to me, I think that's a given, but a lot of people maybe don't think of that. And it's like, you should really do that. Open the window while you're, and then obviously let the hot air.
But if you're a landlord as well, you need to get some sort of fan or timer or humidifier in the bathrooms. Or the shower rooms, even though you've got a window, because there's no requirement to do it if you've got a window, because the person could just open the window. But the best world in the world, no, everybody's the same. We don't all do the same things. We're not always disciplined to do things like that. Just because you are, it doesn't mean to say someone else is. So please don't put your beliefs and expectations on your tenant. Cover yourself. So in other words, cover yourself and make sure you do some sort of preventative. And it is just put a 6-inch, is that a 4-inch, 6-inch, whatever, humidifier fan, prime line or whatever it is they're called. You get them out of juicings and stuff. You get them out of builders merchants. They're really, I'll be honest, how can you buy them on Amazon and stuff like that? Because they cost a bloody fortune. But if you go to Juicens or you go to any reputable builders merchants, which you can buy off the counter anyway, you can just pop in and buy one off of them. And they're about 25 or 30 quid.
Yeah, I met with a landlord yesterday, his property that he's just renovated, and we were talking about the extractor fan in the bathroom, because he put a new one in. And it's one of these, like, it's a really quiet one. And I went to pull the cord to turn it on and off, and he went, no. He went, I've put it in the attic. So it comes on with the light. But he says, because tenants before used to turn it off because it was noisy. He says, but I've put a quiet one in, so it's really, you can barely hear it. So the tenant can't turn it off, so it always comes on and it always aerates and extracts when they're in the shower. But it comes on with the light, and it's
on and off with the light. On and off the light's fine. That's okay. You could put a timer one in as well, which maybe goes 5 minutes to 10 minutes after you switch the light off. Humidifiers are a bit more difficult because if you have a double pole switch, that's what you have to do in new installations on some of the new build properties. They'll have double pole switches. In other words, like your shower switch, where you can you just above the door or wherever it is, you can switch it on and off remotely, and that's when a lot of tenants actually just decide to switch it off there, which is a real difficulty, because then obviously you may as well know how to get there in the first place.
Yeah, but yeah, like you say, Jim, it's definitely if things that we've covered about the windows and things maybe feel a wee bit impractical for your property, then investing in a dehumidifier, that can prove really worthy of the cost for avoiding maybe more expensive jobs and things, and obviously the build-up of mold and damp in a property.
And again, let's just look at that then. Let's look at you investing in a humidifier. Humidifier would normally cost anything between £40 and £60, I think. And you think it's a lot of money, but then when you break it down, it's less than £1 a week, £1 a week for a year. That's it. So 40, 50 quid for a humidifier. Now, what damage gets done if you don't do that? Well, your clothes sometimes get all mouldy and musky. Your health suffers as a result of it as well sometimes, because remember again, that sometimes the person's not actually doing any preventative cleaning at all to make sure there's all that mold that they've generated as a result of the condensation, because that's how it's generated. Is not cleaned up, and therefore it develops into spores. Now, if you see something on your wall or you see something anywhere else and it's a black spot, that is generally classed as condensation. That's a condensation problem. If it's anything other than black, it's probably a damp problem.
Yeah, that's right. And obviously you need to differentiate between what's what. As soon as people see things, they just automatically say the word damp. It resonates all the way through. Every landlord or agent that's dealt with tenants, they'll be able to resonate with that. But
I tell you one place, Richard, it builds up in bedrooms, and it's generally behind cabinets and behind wardrobes. and more so if they're on an outside wall. So in other words, if you're at an end terraced house and your wardrobe's against the wall that's on the outside of the house,
And
therefore the outside wall is cold, the inside is cold, and the warm air hits that with the water vapor, and then it condensates on the wall. But it doesn't dry out because the wardrobe is almost right next to it. So it doesn't. There's no ventilation to let it dry out. So move your wardrobe maybe a bit further away, if possible. So it can get some sort of ventilation in there, but check it now and again, because you don't want at the last minute to dig through all your stuff at the bottom of the wardrobe and then find out some of it's damaged just through condensation.
And you'll not be able to get that. You can't wash it out or anything once it's damaged.
Yeah,
like that.
and you have to be, and you need to have your own insurance as well for contents.
Yeah,
because the landlord's not responsible for your contents.
Yeah,
unless it's negligence. But that's no easy to prove.
Yeah. Over the years, I've had reports from some people, and when I go out to have a look, and it's like you say, Jim, you go in and there's just masses of furniture and stuff up against walls and just no ventilation, and that's what the issue is. So, but let's talk next about catching the flu, and that's FLUAE, not the flu. And as the cold weather bites and people start to stay in and they cook more and they turn up their heat, and the potential for smoke and fumes increasing. So there's some steps you could follow to really put safety first. And first off, I think checking all your smoke alarms, your carbon monoxide detector are working. Landlords are responsible for this, and on the day of a new tenancy starts, they should all be working and in good working order, in date. Obviously, your smoke alarms have an expiry date. Well, tenants should do a monthly check on their own. They should test. You've got test buttons on there, and make sure they're working. And if there's not any of them working or there's a fault, you should really report that to your landlord or your agent, whoever is managing it. And that's very important.
But I can't get up to the roof to test them. If you've got a broom or a mop or anything like that, you've got an end bit on it. And you just push it up to press the button. That's all you need to do. You just need to do it lightly. You don't need to do that. You just need to press it lightly, and you'll test it and pull off again. It'll test the button and it'll test the whole circuit.
Yeah, definitely, and that's what you say, that they should be interlinked, whether that's hardwired or the remote link. One should go off with the rest of them. So yeah, test them. It's a tenant's duty to test them as well. If they're provided to you in working order and things, make sure they work continually. And if they're not, the landlord or agent will happily have them upgraded or replaced if need be. So that's a really important one, smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors. Also, remind tenants that the detectors start beeping regularly. It means that their batteries are running out and they should be replaced. So they'll have a backup battery, although maybe if they're hardwired mains or if they're long life lithium batteries, they do last a long time. But when the battery comes to its end of its life, or it's coming to the end of its life, it will start to beep regularly, and it just means it needs replaced.
I've got actually one in my house in the actual kitchen, the heat detector. It isn't hardwired, and it's fine. It's interlinked through a battery. So now and again it starts beeping, and I know everything else is interlinked with hardwired. So I know straight away it's that one at the bottom. Just need to change the battery. So it's a good sign. You could but because most, yourself, everyone installed now can be interlinked, but I think they do put 10-year lithium batteries in them, don't they?
Now they're the long life lithium batteries in the last 10 years, and your smoke alarm lifespan's 10 years anyway. So the new ones should last the test of time. But I mean, there'll be the odd one that doesn't, and so if it beeps, that's what the issue is.
What happens if your detectors start going off a lot?
Yeah, we've had this before. Sorry, my light went there. If your detectors start going off a lot, they're either positioned incorrectly. I've seen this where they've been positioned too close to the oven or the hob. Also, if you have maybe your toaster positioned and maybe it needs cleaned out and you've got a lot of residue, crumbs and things in there, they will cause smoke that will set off your smoke alarms. So it's worth obviously speaking to your tenant and saying, obviously, do you have your toaster positioned in a certain position where it's got smoke and things going into the heat detector, or is it your heat detector maybe too close to the hob? Now that's been an issue I've noticed before. That's a very rare thing, but it's something I've come up against. Yeah.
Here's some things I've noticed over the years. If your heat detector keeps going off in your kitchen, it might not be a heat detector. It might be a smoke detector. It might be one combined, by the way. There's a responsibility to have a heat detector in the kitchen now. You don't need to have a smoke detector because you know yourself, everything gets burnt. So the heat detector is the one that they recommend in the kitchen now. But there's usually sometimes there's still combined smoke and heat, so that's why it keeps going off, as you said, Richard, with the toast. Other one as well in most apartments or even other houses where you've got the kitchen and you've got the door open in the living room. And the smoke detector in the living room is near the kitchen door. Therefore, the smoke actually travels. If you burn the toast or anything, if you burn the food, it travels and it hits the smoke detector in the living room. So watch out for that one. The other one as well is in your hall. Generally, sometimes it gets set off with the condensation from the bathroom. So when people open after having a really intense shower, I'm not mentioning anybody, Elaine, my wife, because when Elaine comes out the shower, when I come out the shower, everything's fine. When Elaine comes out the shower, it looks like a Turkish bath.
Like stars in their eyes.
It's like flipping heck. Aye, stars in your eyes. Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be. It's like, I can't believe it sometimes. It's it's pretty. It's like, can I just cut this a space in this condensation here, and I could just get through. So watch out for that, because then it does travel out into the hall when you open the door sometimes, and it will hit the smoke detector, and it'll probably set it off. So just be aware of these things. Don't panic. Just understand that that's the things that could possibly set it off. So if you know straight away that's what's happened in the relationship, you know, okay, that's set it off. You don't need to throw, like phone the fire brigade or anything like that. No, it's just like, just double check.
Yeah, I think as we speak about smoke alarms and carbon monoxide, just as a reminder, every property on each level should have a smoke alarm, and there should be carbon monoxide detectors in the rooms where you have combusting appliances, which is your boiler, or if you've got a log burning stove and things as well. You should have these provisions in the correct places in a rental property. So
I believe they have to be within 1 meter of the actual
not in the cupboard beside the boiler. That's important as well.
So any carbon monoxide detector for any installation, as you said, like the gas boiler, log burning stoves, gas fires as well, and should have a carbon monoxide detector within 1 meter of the actual unit itself. Okay, just to make that clear.
Yeah. It's just obviously smoke alarms and that are very important. Let's talk about embracing the heat then, Jim. And while gas and electricity bills are less than what they were last year at its peak, the cost is still a bit of a concern for many people, and in particular tenants and things, as really at the forefront when people are looking for property. And so here are some ways that we could look at less energy, to use less energy without causing problems and having to obviously cut back on the actual heat itself. So I think ask tenants if they've noticed any drafts in their property, and if you're able to fit maybe inexpensive draft excluders, whether that's on windows and doors, and even looking at things like keyholes. And we say this numerous times, and it's something that people won't think about, is keyholes and letter boxes and things that really a lot of the hot air will escape out of. And that is a really cost-effective way to keep your property warm during the really cold months, because you could lose heat. And you'll know yourself, Jim, you could put the heating on, place could be warm, you turn it off, and if you've not got proper draft excluders and it's escaping, your heat will just go, and you're back to square one, and you've spent all that money heating the property up. Yeah.
Defeats the purpose. It's like you've just as I say, personal experience. When we're going to the airport, it's like Elaine leaves the door open and the whole house is nice and hot, and it's like, can you not just close the inside door? Because I don't know what it is. I'm just programmed to see pounds, notes flying out the door. Like pound notes and £10 notes taking flight and flying out the door as the heat disappears outside.
Yeah, definitely. And then, and in addition to things like maybe taking precautions like draft excluders and that, also look at where your furniture is positioned in your property. Do you have sofas in front of radiators or furniture, or maybe like let's say a sideboard, a lot of people might not like, or a console table, or just something in front of your radiator which is blocking the heat? That is going to really reduce
people with our curtains.
Yeah.
Over the radiators at the windows.
Yeah, and where's it going? It's going up, and then it'll go out the window.
Yeah.
Yeah, or
Effectively,
dissipate.
you're just heating the space between the curtain and the window. That's it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so
your
that's
curtains, make sure your curtains are just at the right height. Even just pin them up with a couple of safety pins, so they just hit the bottom, and most of the heat comes out from the. So when it hits the ledge, it actually flows out into the room rather than actually just continues behind the curtain.
Yeah, definitely keep an eye on where you're positioning furniture, especially in the winter months. And I mean, in all honesty, I am guilty because I have my couch partially covers one of my radiators, and it annoys me. But it's just obviously I'll have to move it. But again, because I'm aware that it blocks the heat coming through one of the radiators, so it's something to think about your positions of your furniture. Also, another thing I'm guilty of: keep your internal doors closed. If you're trying to keep warm, close doors behind you. Don't have every door in the house open because you'll just lose all that heat. And it's a lot more cost effective and efficient to keep the doors closed and keep that heat in the main rooms that you're spending most of your time in. And also use a timer on your thermostat so that it comes on and heats up at certain times. And then, I mean, that's if your property does have one, but then it's a lot more cost effective to do that as well.
So do you know the one thing that we notice? We've obviously got the cats, so we leave the living room door open all the time for the cats to get in and out. But it's only enough for the cats to get through. But see if you open that door even double what that space is, you notice it straight away in the room. You actually feel a draft coming into the room, and it's probably gone from that to that in terms of how much it's open. And you just notice it. So it's clearly obvious that, there's drafts all about around your house. Now, let's be honest. You're meant to have drafts in your house because it's actually to get rid of things like the condensation and stuff like that.
You have to have aerial.
So, so you've got to start to get into the mentality of making sure you do open the windows because everything gets sealed. So you're double glazing seals on the windows. There's no drafts coming in there. Your front door now is double glazed, and it usually seals the front door as well. Your chimney. If you've not got a chimney, and modern houses don't have chimneys, so they've got nowhere for any ventilation to come from as well. And mostly, a lot of new houses are actually built on concrete bases, and that's how they do it. And they don't actually put this space in between, for the getting under the floor anymore. It's all built on concrete. How they do it. So therefore, you've got nowhere for any drafts to come in. So there's no surprise. Again, as I said, it is you get condensation, and it just hits all the walls and causes mold and damp.
Yeah, it could be a big issue if you don't. Obviously, if you get into that mindset and think, right, okay, and like you say, close doors, but then keep the air flowing and things as well. And
thermostats is a good one. Thermostats, by the way, radiators. So if your room's just so every single radiator, every modern house has I think it's TVRs, valves on your radiators. So what that is designed to do is right. Listen in, folks, because it's a bugbear of mine. Everybody thinks if you turn the TVR up, it'll turn the heat in the radiator up. It doesn't. It's a thermostat for the room. In other words, when the temperature gets the right temperature in the room, in other words, 20 degrees is room temperature, it cuts off if it's at that. So when you've got the wee dot in the middle, the wee dot you're meant to be at, that's room temperature, that's 20 degrees if you set it to that. If the room's, once the heating's on full blast and you get the heat into the room and it's not hot enough, just turn it up a quarter point, a quarter digit, and just keep doing that at some point where you think, okay, that is the right temperature now. And if it's too hot in the room, turn it down a quarter point. And then eventually you'll get the right temperature on the radiators for the room. It's not the temperature in the radiator. The heat in the radiator is delivered. The heat in the radiator is delivered by the boiler. The boiler has a setting as well, which delivers the temperature of the water in your radiators. So the thermostat on your radiator is for the room. The thermostat on the boiler is for the actual heat in the radiator itself, the temperature. So in other words, it could pump 60 centigrade in. If you turn it up a bit, it could pump 70 centigrade in. It's kind of like a hot water ball, I would say. Your hot water ball starts off really hot, and then suddenly it starts to cool down, and that's because nothing else is continuing to heat it up. Whereas your boiler does when you put it at 60 or 70 degrees.
60 or 65. Yeah, definitely. I think that is a lot of people have got that misconception with the thermostats on the radiators in each room. So keep that in mind, because it is, people just cramp them all up to full, and that's a really,
Yeah.
that's something. If you,
I often walk in the office and it's like bloody
I
Africa.
know that's why you're saying that, because the girls in the office are bad for doing it. Yeah.
And then you immediately look at the TVR and the radiator and it's been turned up to full blast.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's fully open, it's on permanently. No wonder it's not going to switch off. There's no thermostat to switch the boiler off, so it gets far too hot and they go, oh, I'm really tired. It's like, I'm not surprised. It's like you're roasting. Well, I would be as well.
Yeah, I know. Also, thinking of energy efficiency and things as well, and obviously, if you're at that time of year where you're trying to heat your properties, and obviously the cost of utilities and things and that to heat, you need to think of obviously being really cost effective. And energy sapping appliances and things like your washing machines, your dishwashers, your tumble dryers, try using them maybe at later times in the day or at night times when tariffs and that are lower, because that could try and offset a wee bit of what you're spending on the heating.
There's a bit of fear there, isn't there, about running your washing machine, your dishwashers, and your tumble dryer at night.
I wouldn't mean through
because
the
night. Because of the stories you've heard about the fires that have been caused and stuff like that. So everybody's kind of nervous about that. I mean, we don't do it either. We don't. We actually, what we do with our washing machine is we put the timer on to come on in the morning at a certain time when we know we're just about to get up.
Yeah.
So, because we are concerned, because there's lots of makes of washing machines that have gone on fire at some point in time. You've had to be recalled. So we always get nervous about that. So we personally just don't do it. We don't put stuff on during the night. Only thing it does get put on is the dishwasher. There's nobody in the kitchen. The kitchen is basically pretty sparse. It's got a double sealed ceiling, double skinned ceiling. So that's fire retardant in between, to make sure the fire doesn't spread. And we close all the doors as well, so it's all self-contained, and the doors are all solid wood, so it takes ages for a fire to get through. And then you've got the heat detector, which sets everything off automatically. So you can see I've thought this out, eh?
Yeah. I wouldn't expect anything less, Jim.
The only thing I worry about is my cats. It's like, we'll get out all right, but it's like the cats can't exactly open the door. Yeah. So the thing I worry about the most is obviously the cats are across the hall in their own private room, but we do close that door to keep them all in there during the night, because if they wander about, they start having parties and fighting and meowing at each other and stuff like that, and it wakes you up.
Yeah, but yeah, no, that's important. I think that if you do investigate, there is actually off-peak times with your utilities, and I think it just starts a wee bit earlier in the evening. So just maybe wait and do dishwasher washing and things, not necessarily leaving them running when you're in your bed, because that can't be.
I think you're getting rewarded from some of the energy companies now for using using it at different times of day, the energy tariffs.
Yeah. So that's a good pointer for obviously saving a wee bit and offsetting some of your heating costs and things as well. Also, if your renter property has gas heating and radiators, show your tenants how to bleed the radiators, and how to
top up the system,
and how just all these general things about obviously bleeding the radiators, topping up your pressure on your boiler, and if your radiators have got a lot of excess air in them, they're not going to be as effective as they should be. And
can I just run through so everybody understands what two types of systems? You've got an unvented system, which is a system boiler, which has a hot water tank. It feeds the radiators. You then have a combi, which is the water comes in straight away, and it does it as it goes. Okay, most of these boilers have pressure settings on them, a pressure. So in other words, the pressure has to be a certain amount before the boiler comes on in the radiators. And it usually is about 1 bar to 1.5 bars on the gauge. It's all done in bars. Okay, so that means there's a good pressure in the system. So if you bleed the radiators, what happens is you're taking some of the water out. It's just like taking air out of a tire. Therefore, the tire will go down. Therefore, the pressure goes down. Therefore, the boiler switches off and will not come on. So you have to know how to turn the tap under the boiler just to top it up to 1.5 bar again and switch the tap off again. And that's what you need to know how to do. And if you don't know how to do that, then you need to speak to your letting agent or landlord. Just say, look, I've got a combi boiler. Could you show me how to do this? Or I've got a boiler that's got a pressure valve on it. Well, I need to know how to top up the boiler if the radiators are there. Now and again, you also get the dissipation of water within the radiator, just out of the fact that the boiler's going, or you've got a leak, tiny leak, with Hoover rage. People get Hoover rage,
yeah.
and they put it in the pipes on the radiators themselves, and it just loosens it off a wee bit. And there's a wee bit of water comes down, but it's not enough. Well, there's a wee bit of water that forms, you know, in the joint in the valve, and then it's not enough to actually cause a problem. But it slowly brings the pressure down over a 3 or 4 months, and you don't know where it is. In order to resolve that situation, but that's why sometimes your boiler actually loses its pressure as well. So you just need to learn how to top it up to make sure it's at 1 to 1.5 bars.
Yeah, definitely. That's some good advice there, Jim. So hopefully that's if you weren't aware of that and the different systems, then that's helped you. And I think tenants may not always realise that keeping some rooms and that unheated in a property could really cause damage, and it could be to the detriment of the property, which is not just costly for the landlord. I think it's costly for everyone involved. So I think it's good to help your tenant make choices, work together, and ultimately help everyone, the tenant and the landlord, by looking after the property.
The more you do this prevention, which is a normal tenant duty, also landlord duties as well for you know for the property. So if you work hand in hand with your landlord, you'll live in a nice cozy home, and your landlord will have enough to reinvest in the property if anything goes wrong, or if they decide that, look, the kitchen's a bit tired now, I'm going to renew the kitchen. You're a good tenant, you look after the property, I'll make a decent return on it, so I could actually invest some of that money and actually put a new kitchen back in. I could possibly put a new bathroom in as well, and I could possibly put maybe upgraded radiators, upgraded heating system, for some of the older style ones. These are all things that can happen as a result of a good relationship with you and the letting agent and the landlord.
Yeah, definitely. I think it helps everybody all round to have a combined interest in maintaining and looking after the property itself. Let's talk next about holding back the rain. So obviously winter brings really harsher conditions, and we know that all too well in Scotland. And it really has an effect on the outside of your property. But maybe sometimes tenants' attention will understandably be going to keeping warm indoors. So it's worth having a recheck outside and go through a few things just to make sure that the external of the property is looked after. And I think one of the main things, and we always say this, and that's one of the main things we do on inspections when we do a perimeter walk and things, is do any of the gutters look blocked? Is there blocked gutters? Do they have fallen leaves in them? It's such a common occurrence at this time of year that could lead to overflowing and penetrating water, which then ultimately leads to water ingress and damp or condensation inside. So, I mean, they could be easily cleared, but it needs to be picked up, whether the tenant notices it and reports it, or whether the letting agent picks it up on an inspection.
Again, it's all preventative maintenance, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just catching this before it happens. If you're next door to a lot of trees, and you know, fine, all the leaves come off the trees, then make sure you have that. Even get the wee, sieves that go on top of your gutter, on top of the downpipe. So when anything comes to the downpipe, like leaves or that, it actually drains it out with the sieve, and just the water actually goes into the downpipe, so it doesn't block it. These are the sort of things that you should really invest in. Some people actually put right along their gutters. You know, like you have in the ground, you have these grates in the ground for your driveway, and the water goes into it. Well, you get that for the top of your gutters as well. You can put that in, so when the water hits, just the water goes in, but nothing else goes in the gutter itself. I mean, it's costly, but preventative wise, it might be actually quite handy. I used to love the snow, and I used to love Christmas and all the rest of it. And I don't mean it, I used to love Christmas, but I hate it now. But I used to love this time of year as a kid. And my dad used to go, God, snow again on the roofs and stuff like that. And I went, what? What? And then now I eventually get it. Because when the snow hits the roof, it's not like the rain and it disappears. It sits on the roof for a long time, especially if your house is insulated properly. That's a good measure to know if your house is insulated properly. If the snow's still on the roof when it falls. But it stays on for a long time, and it more or less drip feeds water into your house if you've got a problem with your roof.
Yeah.
And nobody can do anything about it. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah, I think as you progress through life and realise the damage that certain things could do, that maybe you were unaware of at a younger age, then you look at it differently, definitely.
I bring it up every year about the rain and the snow. It's like, oh God, here we go again. Yeah, we're going winter. Here we go. Here we come. Bring it on.
Yeah, and I think as well, and it brings me on. I'm going to talk about, obviously, does the property have any slip tiles or that have fallen off recently? Now, I think of all the high winds and everything we've experienced recently. Is there any loose or slip tiles? They should be fixed immediately. Replace them or have them put back in place.
Yeah. I would schedule your roofer to do it now, Richard.
Yeah.
I would schedule your roofer to do it now, even though, and it's like they might go, well, we can't get up to the roof tonight. That's fine. Put it on your list. I really need it done, because the time when most of the snow and most of the problems come is usually February, March, and early April. Yeah. That's when we get the most of it in terms of snow. So you've still got a time to actually do something with your roof right now, to make sure that it's wind and watertight for when the real season comes.
Yeah, because I mean, slipped and missing tiles, like you say, Jim, to avoid rain and like the snow build up. If that gets on there and there's a missing tile, that's going to just come right through. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on that. If you see anything, report it to your landlord or your agent, and they will more than likely have that fixed as quickly as they can, because that's as important to them as it is important to you. Also, encouraging tenants to maintain the external property in terms of maybe sweeping up the paths, taking leaves and things away for their own safety as well. Because I mean, leaves on paths and things, when they get wet and then possibly if they freeze, do you know, they can become icy, they can become slippy. Do you know, it's things like this just to keep pathways and entrances clear and safe to use for anybody coming and going from the property.
Yeah, definitely, I would say.
So
it is one of the hazards. And make sure, you know, if you've not got an outside light, there's no requirement, by the way, for a landlord to give you an outside light. So don't go down that road. I've had it recently. Make sure you just buy yourself a torch.
Yeah,
it is dark at this time of year. Even getting home for your work about 4 or half 4. Make sure you buy yourself a torch and go up that steps, and make sure you've got your steps cleaned regularly, and your and maybe salt. Keep some even cheap table salt will do the job. You know, stick that down, and it'll dissipate the ice at least, or in some shape or form. But don't try and do it with hot water, because it'll just it's like, yeah, I'll do it with hot water, and then it's just like your car windscreen. When you put it on, it starts, and then all of a sudden when it gets less and less, it starts to freeze onto the window.
Yeah. I've been there, done that.
Tell me about it. That's why I'm saying it.
Yeah, talk about external lights. It is good to have external lights for safety and things, but as a tenant, I mean, they might think, oh, that's a really expensive thing for me to do. And our external light actually just recently went out. And I'm like, God, I'm going to have to get a new one. But do you know, I found one in a local hardware store relatively cheaply. I think it was like $7.99, and I thought, God, this is never going to work. It's brilliant, because obviously we need it for the dog at the back garden and things, and just to be able to see when it's dark.
Yeah,
brilliant. It's amazing. I can't believe it. And I was like, maybe no last, but it has anyway. So you could get them reasonably priced without obviously breaking the bank to get an external light that's really good.
Bargains.
And it's motion sensor.
Keep them in the lifestyle they're accustomed to.
Well, I think it was either Home Bargains or B&M's or something like that.
No, I'm having a go again at their house on their house on Mosquito Island. That's all. I just can't believe. Hats off to them, but it's just like, you know, I just think it's unbelievable that managed to do that.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, any tips like this and things that we've discussed just up to now, feel free to come to me. I've put my contact number and my email and everything in the blog attached to this post. Any questions? I mean, you could tell obviously by our conversations that from my own experience and obviously working in the industry, that I've got a lot of tips and advice. So I'm happy to speak to anybody about anything that we've covered today.
Yeah.
And finally, we're going to talk about gearing up for going away, Jim. And I said that at the start about tenants going on holiday or leaving the property vacant for a certain period of time. You need to notify your landlord and agent first and foremost. It might invalidate their insurance. They need to know for the insurance purposes and things as well. But obviously thinking about properties being vacant, there's obviously more burglaries are becoming a thing of a common in darker months as well, when it's quite dark and obviously they've not got the light nights. And tenants often head off during the Christmas holidays, and obviously, or they maybe go and live with family or go and spend the holidays with family, and it makes homes really more vulnerable. So there's some precautions to take to that as well. And like you said, Jim, make sure you've got external lights, maybe motion sensors, if they're all set up, have them working, have them up and running. And if the the approach to your property is dark, then have the battery powered lamps and things with motion sensors set up properly. So visibility is there for yourself, and also it will deter people that shouldn't be on the property if they approach it in the dark, because it will obviously switch on, and it is quite a good deterrent. So that's a simple way to keep your property safe when it's empty. I think as well, if your tenants are planning to head off on holiday, and if it's over the Christmas period and things, maybe give them a wee checklist. Say, could you run through these things before you go, before you leave the property, to make sure that it's secure and it's going to be left. And even if it's maybe
That's a
things
really
like,
good one. Yeah, that's actually a really good one, Richard, about the checklist.
yeah, even
And
setting your
lock the
heat
doors.
very low. Do you know you could set your TVRs or you could set them to the wee frost setting so that they click on, so that in the colder months if it's going to be empty.
Most newer boilers are actually fitted with a frost setting automatically. So if it goes, I think if it goes beyond 4 degrees in the house, the boiler primes itself automatically, and then if it goes more, it actually just puts a lukewarm, heat throughout the radiators just to keep everything okay.
Yeah.
So don't run to your boiler and switch off at the wall. Remember to keep your boiler on, but some do actually have a proper frost setting on them. So just check with your make and model, and check with your letting agent or your landlord.
Yeah, what that does is keep off the obviously things like the freeze, but it also it could do that without wasting a lot of energy or being costly. So that is something that's really important. But the simplest things, Jim, when people are going away, and it's making sure all the doors and the windows are closed and locked correctly. And that people might think, God, that's just common sense. But unfortunately,
not that common.
It's not that common, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's like,
so, yeah.
and I see it quite a lot. I do, a once in a blue moon when you're walking down the street or something like that, somebody's away, you look over and you think their top hopper's wide open, and I just have the sense to go over and just push it shut. I don't. By the way, I know there's no cats or animals in the property, because sometimes somebody's got the top hopper open for their cat to get in and out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I know that's not the case. So once in a blue moon, I've seen it happen, and then I've just pushed the window shut so nobody would know. Same thing as well when you walk past doors, and they're away. So, and the telltale sign is whoever's put leaflets through the doors. This is why when we did canvassing, we used to put the leaflet right through the door. Because I tell you what, if you put leaflets through doors and you leave it hanging out, more or less if it sits there for 2 or 3 days because the person's away on holiday, it tells anybody it's casing the house, if they are, that nobody's in that house. So that's another telltale sign. So you've got to watch out for that. And if you do see that a lot of stuff piled up at the door and they're not away on holiday, then check with them, make sure they're okay. If you see, the old thing that used to advertise on the telly was, if you see milk at the door, because the milkman used to deliver, and the milk, there's about 2 or 3 days worth of milk there, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, something's wrong. Or even after the first day, to be honest. Or even at the bins, sometimes people will leave their bins out, put them back up the drive, because they've maybe left them out because they're going away on holiday and they need them emptied for when they come back. So they put them out maybe 3 or 4 days earlier. They go away on holiday, but their bins are still sitting there. So they might not have anybody organised to put the bins back in their drive or back at the property. So just, do them a favour and take them back and put them in.
I know, it's quite good to be, it's good to be neighbourly, and obviously have a bit of compassion to who stays around you. Obviously, good neighbours are quite hard to come by. So if you've got good neighbours, then look after each other and look for signs like that.
It's a good sign. You're not actually asking for a reciprocation of a favour when you're doing that for someone. But if you're maybe on good terms with your neighbours, and you do know they're away on holiday, and you do know they've left their bins out, maybe just do that for them. You don't need to tell them that you've done it, because that just makes it worse. You just do it. They've then wondered, they'll probably speak to someone else and say, how's my bins? Oh, your next door neighbour brought them in. Oh, that's brought them. You don't need to announce it to them and look for thanks or stuff like that. It's just like, or you maybe just send them a message and say, your bins are out. Are you away on holiday? It's like, yeah, I'm away on holiday. I'll take them in for you. Because they've been emptied. And you could do something like that, but you don't expect thanks, don't expect acknowledgement. We're just not all the same. We don't think the same way as well. It's just like I posted something last night on the person with their feet on the wall on the plane.
Yeah, I must have missed that.
They had their feet up on the wall on the plane, and I was like, "Oh, bite your tongue, Jim." Because it's
I
like,
was going to say, did you not say anything?
no, I felt like it.
Yeah,
Would you do that in your own home? Anyway, that's we got that out. You see, I was waiting for that. But my point was, if the stewardesses aren't bothered about it, and the steward, it's like, why should I bother about it?
Yeah, I suppose. But yeah, it would kind of get me as well.
Mel Robbins actually says this quite well. Says, just learn to let it be.
Yeah.
Just let it happen.
I mean, I think I would if it was a longer haul flight. But I mean, what were you on the flight? 2 hours?
3 hours.
Yeah, so it's like it's not that a long flight, but anyway.
And woke me up twice, bumped me with her bag she had in the middle chair. And it's like, and I went, what? Because I thought they were serving something. She went, no, it's all right, it's all right. It's like, oh God, you've just woke me up. I was having a nice deep sleep. It's like that was me awake now.
Yeah, but I think as we talk about this, I think the most important thing for me is for tenants to always make your landlord or your agent aware if you're going away on holiday, especially for an extended period of time and in these winter months, so that precautions can be taken and things can be put in place to make sure the property is okay. And as we talk about that, I mean, most homes go through the winter without break-ins and frozen pipes and things, but it's better to be safe than sorry. And at the very least, there's no point in tempting fate.
Tempting fate, yeah, you're absolutely right.
So
it's prevention better than cure. Again, as we're coming to say, prevention is definitely better than cure.
And the question really that landlords, agents, and even tenants should all be thinking to themselves, they're watching this or just in general, is my property ready for winter? And if you can't answer that completely clearly thinking, yes, it is, then there's obviously things you need to look at.
Well, if they get in touch with you, you can give them a winter checklist.
Yeah.
So if they get in touch with you, you can give them a winter checklist, and then they could take it for there. What they're, they could look at the winter checklist, and they'll tell them everything they should be doing, everything they should be looking after. There'll be a couple of things on there they probably don't know anything about it. They should have done. Yeah. And they go, good. It's a great reminder. There's no upsell, by the way. Just a winter checklist.
I've also got a really good leaflet which advises on
condensation,
prevention for condensation and things as well. Yeah.
So, yeah, that you can send to all your tenants as well, and just say like, this is the measures that you've got to do to prevent condensation in your house. So please do them for your own benefit and your own health as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's funny. I'm going to just have a wee gripe there at the end about no, I'm just going to say this about mold and damp and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Do you ever notice when the television comes on and they talk about landlords allowing their properties to be mold infested and damp and all the rest of it, it generally is because of a social rented landlord that's caused that problem. But they don't say it's a social rented landlord. They tend to say, landlords, and they almost insinuate private landlords are culpable as well. When in actual fact, most of these cases that you actually see on the television are actually social rented private landlords. They're generally council houses, because they wheel out the person from the council spokesman to actually make an apology for the fact that they've left their tenant in a situation with damp and mold conditions which has affected their health. It's very rare you've even got a private landlord involved in this, but you do notice that the news decides to give it as landlords rather than actually as council landlords or social landlords.
Yeah, and people just automatically associate the word landlord with the private rented sector.
And then when it's the other way around, they just go, it's private landlords.
Yeah.
So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't, eh?
Yeah, I know. But yeah, no, you're quite right, Jim. But hopefully that's all been quite good information. You could come to me if anybody wants to elaborate on that and get any tips and things as well. Jim, you and I are doing the Wealth Creation Show Monday. We're talking about pensions on Monday.
Yep.
So that's going to be a really interesting one. Yeah. No, it's not actually. Do you know?
I know.
You sent me some stats and things that we're going to cover, and it's quite an eye opener, to be honest. And
I'll give you the eye opener. Most people retire at 65. It will now be 66. Okay, yeah. And they'll retire on an income that they can't afford to live on, so they'll have to continue to work whether they like it or not, and they won't be allowed any of the choices they want to have. So you need to get real about this and watch the Wealth Creation Show at 12:30 on Monday. Also, if you're retiring at 66 or 65 and the average age of life is 80 years old now, you've literally got 15 years to enjoy the rest of your life. And I'm not saying piss it up against the wall today and actually, you know, just get on with it and enjoy yourself and life's too short and all the rest of it. That's not what I'm saying. There's a responsible approach to this, and you could enjoy your whole lifestyle that you've got there now up to the point of retirement and still have a huge amount of money and wealth to retire on and enjoy yourself. And who knows, you could be on Necker Island as well.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, tune in Monday 12:30. We're going to discuss that. I think I titled that "Can you live comfortably in your retirement?" And that's a question to ask yourself as well. So, and we'll
95% can't, by the way. That's the answer straight away. 95% of people can't retire comfortably at all.
Which is a scary prospect.
So 95% of people watching right now need to, or listening or tuning into this later on, either need to watch that show because it's been done already, or they need to join us at 12:30 on Monday on the Wealth Creation Show about it.
Yeah. Good. Okay, we'll leave it there today. Thanks for that, Jim. Thanks for everybody that's watching, and hopefully that's been helpful. And we'll see you on Monday.
Okay, bye-bye for now.
Bye.